The St. Louis Blues have a golden opportunity heading home for Game 3 versus the Winnipeg Jets with the best home ice advantage in the entire National Hockey League. We're going to see key players step up, players return, and there's major implications heading into this game. We're going to break down all this and more on this episode of Hat Trick HQ. Before we get into that, if you're enjoying the St. Louis Blues content or content on the National Hockey League, make sure to go down and hit that subscribe button. 91% of you guys watching this aren't subscribed. It's completely free, and we'll do everything to keep you up to date on the league. But with that, we're going to hop straight into the first topic today, where we do know, Darius, listen, the St. Louis Blues have lost 2 games versus the Winnipeg Jets. The silver lining on this, listen, I know it says 5-3 on the first game, but one of these being an empty netter. They've only been outscored by 1 goal with a goaltender in the net, and they're putting up a great fight versus the top team in the West. And listen, going home, we know that they're going to make an impact. We've seen Jim Montgomery say, I think as a group, we're not happy being down 2-0, but the games are really close. There's not much separation going on right now. We need to make separation. We need to find another level when we go home so we can end up on top by a goal. Just kind of throwing at you, what's your thoughts on these first 2 games? And like I said, I don't think St. Louis is totally getting outplayed.
Well, this series is far from over, I think, at this point, although it could turn very quickly depending on what happens in game 3, but we'll get to that in a second. We had a video yesterday on the channel about everything that's happened in this series from the Winnipeg Jets point of view. And I think the biggest thing for the St. Louis Blues is to really shut down Kyle Connor right now because, you had a shaky Connor Hellebuck again in game 1. And then when you look at game 2, he had a bounce back performance. You don't know exactly what you're going to get out of Connor Hellebuck, but you do know what you're getting out of Kyle Connor right now from the Winnipeg Jets. So you have to look to shut this player down. But on the St. Louis Blues side of things, and we see all you guys commenting, all the Blues fans on the channel, you're commenting on the Jets videos, the Blues videos, your support has been unbelievable. But um, I think that coming into this game, the Blues are great on home ice, right? To end the season, this is a huge advantage coming home to play in front of their home crowd. So I think that's going to be a factor. First of all, the crowd is going to will them because we saw that the crowd willed Winnipeg to some wins as well. And these games, like you mentioned, have been very, very tight. There's an empty netter goal in there as well that you can count. Of course, they all count, but the games have been very tight. Even last game, it was tight down to the last minute. So I think that, it's going to be another tight game. I think that Winnipeg, for as much offense as they can produce from not only their forwards, but their back end, they haven't been doing that too well against the St. Louis Blues, which I think is a good sign for the Blues. That's exactly what you wanted to do. Obviously, it's not the result so far, but I think that they've been playing okay. They need to capitalize on a couple more chances and obviously shut down a guy like Kyle Connor. But if you do that, you might find success. So I think the game plan is going to shift a little bit, and obviously coming home will help a little bit. If they can win this game 3, this series completely turns on its head, I think, because yes, you're still down by a game. You have one more game at home. If you tie the series going back to Winnipeg, then anything can happen. You're in their heads, and we know this team can string wins together. We've seen it in the season, so it's gonna be a lot of fun.
And listen, being the hottest team at home and Jordan Binnington 10 straight home wins, we know the Blues went on a 12-game win streak as well. If they can get it, and like you said, if they can get 2 wins at home now, even the series up, they've been a team that knows how to ride the hot hand. So if you're winning 2 in a row, 3 in a
Yeah.
row is not going to be an issue. But listen, we do need to touch on Jordan Binnington. And listen, he hasn't been outstanding yet. Under a 900 save percentage. Both goaltenders have kind of struggled when it comes to the first game. The second game, they tightened things up. But I'm going to kind of throw it to you again, Darius. Listen, we know Jordan Binnington won 10 straight home games this year. An insane stat. Something that no other goaltender, I believe, this season has done. But looking at this, would you trust Jordan Binnington going home again? There's ideas that I've seen floated around by fans on social media to go to Hofer's hand. What's your thoughts on who you would play?
I don't think you can go back to Hofer yet, at least. If you're going to do it, it's probably now. But based on what I've seen from Binnington, I wouldn't do that in this series. I would ride it out with Binnington. I think he's the guy. He's the guy that you have to put in the position to succeed. So I think he's got to play game 3. And again, if you were going to make a change, it would be at this point. You can't wait till game 4, especially if you're down 3-0 to make that change. Makes no sense at that point as well. So it makes even less sense at that point, actually. But I think that Binnington's going to stay in the net. And I think that the caliber of hockey and the style of hockey changes for all teams once the playoff starts, right? The shots that you're seeing at the end of the regular season are not what you're seeing in the playoffs. Guys are shooting from everywhere. They're hitting skates. They're hitting, sticks in front of the net, stuff like that. The first goal the other night was literally a deflection, a shot from the point and deflection. So, you're seeing different things. I think Binnington kind of settled down. He had a big save in game 2 as well. Huge save to keep the minutes. So, I think that he's going to settle down a little bit more, get used to the, what's coming his way. And same thing goes for Hellebuck, right? He hasn't been great in the playoffs, especially dating back to last year. We've talked about it a lot, right? So, what happens in these games is a lot different than the end of the regular season when you're playing so well and you're really comfortable. The style of play, the shots that you're seeing, they're different. So I feel like he's going to settle in here. He already kind of has made some big saves, but I wouldn't move away from him at this point. I would ride out the series with Binnington.
And that's the biggest thing looking at this team. Binnington has been the heart and soul of this team for many seasons. We've seen him win a Stanley Cup with him. He's been outstanding this year. I think getting on home ice is going to change how this team rolls. Looking at the line, so there's not a lot of changes, obviously, and we're going to touch on this very quickly. You would like to get Dylan Holloway back in this lineup. As of recording this, we're not getting any reports on his possible return for Game 3, but we do know that there's speculation that he will be back for this series. This would be a game changer going into Game 3 if they can get him. And listen, knowing our luck and your guys' luck, he would return for Game 3 after recording this. But as of right now, we don't have anything. But getting him into this lineup would be huge. We're seeing key guys step up. Snuggerud has been outstanding in his first playoff run. We know there's a lot of guys like Robert Thomas that could take the next step in this series. We know Braden Shen hasn't registered a point, I believe, in the series either. But looking at the lineup, Griffin, or Darius, is there anything you would like to do to just change things up, or would you kind of ride this out? We know there have been close games and just hope that you can get Holloway back.
Well, until Holloway comes back, I think this is the way you do it. I kind of like Tyler Tucker down there too, as well as an option because, he's a scrappy player. I watched him in the OHL as well. So, scrappy player down there. I do like him in the lineup, a little bit inexperienced, and that's something we see around the league. That is a thing right now in the playoffs. If you have an inexperienced team or some inexperienced players, that is definitely a factor in the playoffs, but, good to get him the experience nonetheless. And then again, when Holloway comes back, you'll go back to your regular lineup, I think. And again, there's nothing about him returning for Game 3. This is a player that they need back. They need him back in the lineup. He is a huge factor for them. And the fact, again, I'll say it in every single video, the fact that the Oilers let this guy go is insane to me. But they could really use him right now. They could also use a goaltender. But I think that when you're looking at Dylan Holloway, there's nothing about him returning for Game 3, but I would think if they have their backs against the wall, he will play whatever game that is. Maybe they're just saving him to make sure he can get as close to 100% as possible, but they do need him in the lineup. So if he doesn't play Game 3, I would imagine even if they win Game 3, that he's going to play in Game 4, that we'll see him at some point. For them to say we'll see him in this series, you can't wait for the series to, if the series goes 3-0 now, he's got to play, right? So I think that we will see him, the earliest or the latest, I should say, Game 4 at this point. He will be inserted back into the series, and they need him. And nobody's really 100% at this point in time. I'm sure he's just trying to heal whatever it is he's dealing with. Like, again, nobody's even close to 100% when the playoffs come around, but this is a guy they need in the lineup. He's a difference maker, and he knows what it takes to win. He went to the Stanley Cup final last year. So it's going to be interesting to see how this plays out. There's nothing right now. It's still an option by everything we've heard that he could play Game 3, but I would think, if I was a betting man on this specifically, it would be Game 4. I think we'll see Holloway back.
And listen, getting the scoring into the lineup would be awesome. And once again, I want to touch on Cam Fowler real quickly before the end of the video. Trade of the year. It's insane how good Cam Fowler has been since joining the St. Louis Blues. But what's your guys' thoughts on this, Blues fans? I know you're down 0-2 in a series versus the Winnipeg Jets, but if any team's going to come back, it's going to be the Blues. We've seen them go on the win streaks. We know their home records. We know how good Jordan Binnington's been at home. We know this team can perform. I think there's just a lot of just nervousness throughout the lineup. What's your guys' thoughts on this? What do you think the score of the Blues game tonight is? I'm going to say 3-1 Blues win. They're going to start evening up this series. Let us know down in the comments right down there. Leave a like, subscribe, share this with your friends. We'll be back with another episode, so keep your eye out for that. But I've been your host, Mark, with my co-host, Darius, and take care.